Folks, welcome back to the Leeds View for our podcast for this week. Going solo on my own tonight to just kind of digest what I suppose has come out over the last couple of days after the fallout of the closing of the transfer window and the comments that came out from Leeds managing director Robbie Evans yesterday. There's a lot of stuff to get through over the course of the last 2 days in the news. I'll start my chair out. The last 2 days in the news, there's been, I suppose, bits and pieces from this that I put out, and a lot of people have been asking for more opinion stuff and giving a bit more of a deep dive in it. So I thought tonight, you know what? I'll do this on my own. We'll have a chat. We'll go through this, and we're going to go through it step by step. I've picked out the main comments that have come out from Robbie Evans, as well as just seeing where we are now as we get ready to head in. I'll stick your comments up on the screen so you can see it, but I will have my head down and I will be looking at another screen here. So if I don't get to your comments, don't hold it against me, but we'll get to them in due course. But I do hope you're all having a really good evening and a really good week. It's a tough one for us in the YouTube game when the international break kicks in and all of a sudden no one's watching any content anymore because Leeds are on a break. So to everyone that's stuck with us and is still watching videos and like it and subscribing and all the normal YouTube stuff, really appreciate that. Really, really do appreciate that. So yeah, we'll get stuck into it. Oh, by the way, I meant to say this. Shane Dalton, thanks very much, mate. I believe there's a $5 for a cup of coffee behind the counter for me and Bio and Duleek. So thanks for that. I was talking to one of the lads. Appreciate it. Right, let's get stuck into this. And I suppose how we're going to do this is I kind of want to premise the whole thing and just to be fair, if nothing else, we make an attempt to try and at very least be fair so that any negative points are balanced out by some positive points and that we sit somewhere in the middle. I think your audio and visual is slightly out of sync. Nothing I can do about it at the moment, unfortunately, because that's just where we are. So unfortunately, if there is an audio out of sync issue, it's internet stuff, I suppose. So not a huge amount I can do about that at this point, but we'll crack on and see how we go. We're just going to start off, and I'm going to be really small on the screen in the corner in a minute, so you're not going to need to see my face. So yeah, I can't do anything about the audio visual sync, lads. So we'll move on. I will share my screen here, and what we'll do is we'll just crack on and go through the comments. Now, again, as I say, see, the audio sync won't be an issue now. I do want to premise this with a few bits and pieces, and just start off by saying, let's assume for 1 minute that what Leeds are saying about their PSR situation and being maxed out is true. And then we'll talk about where we are with this, and we'll analyze what they've said, and we'll see if it all adds up a little bit. Okay. I've basically taken each of the main points from Baron Cross's piece in The Athletic after the interview with Robbie Evans, and kind of we'll digest this bit by bit. I suppose poke holes in it if there's needed to be poked holes in, and we'll back it up if there's need to back up what they are saying. But we'll go with the first one, and the first one that is worth talking about is this, and it basically says you didn't bring any players in on deadline day. How do you explain that? Great question. Glad it was asked. And Evans said it's pretty straightforward. We had a player that we had targeted that didn't come true. We thought we had the right price. We put in an offer above that price. Player was on board. Fulham couldn't get it done. And as has been reported already, we sent the deal sheet in after being given some indication that it could work. They were also doing 3 deals at once coming into yesterday. Fulham signed 85 million euros worth of wingers. Whether it was out of time or they just decided not to sell, we don't know, but it didn't happen. Thankfully for us, we got our overwhelming majority of our business done before the last day of the window. We missed that one, and it's that kind of simple. So that's the first one, okay? Let's poke some holes in this, and let's see where this sits. So Evans says, pretty straightforward, we had a player that we targeted. First part is, they will say throughout this that they got all their prime targets. And assuming they were still going for Harry Wilson on the final day, we assume that Harry Wilson would then also have to be one of their prime targets. And again, I'm assuming that they're right in what they're saying because that allows us to take it apart a little bit more and actually look at the finer detail of it. So assuming Harry Wilson was a prime target, why wait till the final day of the window to get it done? That's the big bit with me. Okay. That's the first part of it. Also, via The Athletic and Baron Cross himself, he says, and they say, that they were told that Leeds United had been informed sometime between mid-afternoon and the deadline that Harry Wilson was not for sale. Now, I watched the Square Ball earlier this week as well, and they asked a question about Gus Hammer, and it was asked about him as well. And Baron Cross said they're still trying to verify this, but as far as they're concerned and what they believe, Gustavo Hamer was an option, and Leeds did try to get him over the line. They didn't get it done. And I think if you look at Sheffield United's reaction once the window closed, they had that gif of Hamer walking past the camera doing this in a Sheffield United tracksuit. That to me says that there was interest and they've managed to hang on to him come the end of the window. So there's a lot of holes to poke in that one. There's also the financial aspect of that. Harry Wilson was going to cost somewhere in the region of 8 to 10 million pounds. Leeds are saying that they had maxed out their transfer budget. We'll get to that in more detail in a second. And saying that they would rebalance the books in January should they have to. No reason why they shouldn't have done that and get a different player in the meantime. But there's a lot to poke holes in that one straight away. Why'd you leave it till the last minute? Did Fulham actually, to say that you don't know what happened seems unusual for a buying club to not understand what happened here. At least if you go back to Dan James with Swansea, at least we knew what happened then. They didn't answer their phone. This seems to be an awful lot more vague, I suppose, for me. So that's why, for me, this doesn't hold a huge amount of water as an explanation, because it is, as I say, again, it's pretty vague. The PSR situation, by the way, I'm not covering PSR in this because, again, I am just giving them the benefit of the doubt, to be fair. And also it does allow us to poke holes in it, to say that Leeds said that they maxed out on PSR. The explanation for the Sunderland being able to spend 185 million in ours, they basically referred to Sunderland's PSR situation as a perfect storm. They had very low budget, hadn't spent in 2 years, had a huge amount of headroom as a result of that, sold 2 players for big money, blah, 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 and were then able to go and spend big in this window. And bigger than Leeds. The point that was made, and very well made point by Dan Moylan this week, was that Leeds' revenue absolutely blows Sunderland's revenue out of the park. So Leeds, from a revenue perspective, Leeds are rumoured to be in the top 6 of revenue in the Premier League. And given that PSR is a revenue generator first, its percentage of revenue, you would imagine Leeds are really in a better position than to spend, whether it's 100 million, 101 or 99.7 million, depending on who you read. There's different variations on that. But yeah, that's the first one out of the way. And it seems a bit strange. And again, looking at this here, I'm poking holes in it. But let's move on to the second question that was put to them. As how do you and Daniel Farke sum up the window as a whole for the fans? And Evans says that basically, as far as they're concerned, it was a great window, but a bad day at the end. We set out back in May and we had certain targets as far as key positions, key profiles, estimates of maximum available spend. We checked all those boxes. Given that they left themselves short 2 players come the very end, it is hard to buy that they maximized every bit of their spend and they ticked all of their boxes. He said we brought in all the key players, all being the primary word there, and got them done early. All the key additions for Daniel. We got our top choices of players that eventually moved, aside from Igor Pajot and Facundo Buenanotte. And again, there's more conversations because they don't mention Rodrigo Muniz there, and he was their top target very early on. We'll get to him in a few minutes. Every single player we signed was a top choice. Nobody moved to different clubs. We wanted more than the guys that we got. In that respect, we feel very positive about it, and a bit frustrating to have it end the way it ended because we wanted that cherry on top. It wasn't the pillar that would have wasn't the pillar that would hold out the window. It was the last bit. We wanted one more attacker. We didn't get them, but on balance, we executed our plan early, effectively, and ended the window, frankly, better than I thought. I think they're patting themselves on the back there without getting the full job done. And as people have said before, I will get to the super chats, by the way. When I get through this, I'll get to all of them, okay? To say the things they've said here is interesting because, again, if you go through it, you got all your primary targets. Was Harry Wilson a primary target? Was DCL a primary target? Was the Meslier a primary target? Was James Justin a primary target? Was Sebastian Borneo a primary target? If they were, okay, why didn't you balance your books better? You knew what you had to spend, as they say there. They were planning it since back in May. They basically said they had 6 months worth of planning done for this, and yet they didn't manage to allocate their spend accordingly to have the money, again, by their words, to go and get the last bits and pieces done. So did they execute the plan perfectly? I mean, are they just saying that because it saves face? For me, it seems unusual. Again, Pajot, Muniz, Buenanotte, their top targets. Every player was a top choice. So they're saying that Noah Okafor was their top choice for left wing. Wasn't that Igor Pajot? Wasn't he the top choice? Which means Noah Okafor was not their top choice, but they're saying he is now. So there's a bit of retconning your past there for me, if that makes sense. We'll go on to the next one. It looked like there was money available for targets like Pajot and Rodrigo Muniz. The perception will be that all the money has not been spent. And Pragmarate said, have you spent all the money available? And Evans says, yes, unequivocally, we maxed out PSR this season, this summer. We spent everything that we could. If we had gone on to other targets yesterday or onto higher priced players back in July, the consequences would have been that the current roster in terms of players, you either could not add beyond the guys that you brought in. So the players that came in August wouldn't have come had those deals been done early in July, or you'd have seen more key players from last year's promotion side having to go. For us, there is only a handful of players who were worth even considering making those kind of sales for. When those top players did materialize, we held on to our key players. So basically saying that they prioritized keeping their championship squad from last season, overselling a few of them and reinvesting them in the Premier League, which again is unusual. The fact that they use terms like unequivocally, there's a lot of very strong language used in this to say we definitely got what we wanted. I question that. Maxed out PSR, spent every penny they could. Other targets meant that they did come in, we'd have to sell some players. Pajot and Muniz, ballpark, Leeds said 60 million, but Muniz was always said to be a 40 million pound player. Pajot 30, that's 70 million. The players they brought in instead, Okafor 15, Justin 8, that's 23 million, which meant there was a difference of 47 million. Now, where they thought they were going to sell players to get 47 million pounds from remains to be seen for me. But I'd ask you in the chat, do you feel, and this is a question I think is worth asking, do you feel that Leeds maybe should have traded players out that might have been in and around the fringes of the first team in order to rebalance the squad in the key areas needed? And for that, what I mean is basically Leeds have got 4 goalkeepers, we've got 4 strikers, we've got 2 right wingers, one is Brendan Aronson, so technically you've got one out-and-out right winger, and you've only got one number 10 again, that is Brendan Aronson. So I'd ask you in the chat, would you have sacrificed some of the existing squad from last year in order to bring in players to rebalance this? The likely ones and the PSR ones are like Stroke, but there was offers on the table for Piru as well. So there is stuff there. But I'd like to know what you all think. Mike is saying yes. Good shout, Mike. Yeah. Tony saying who? Well, if you go through the PSR players, Tony, players that carried a decent PSR money would have been Meslier, Stroke, Harrison, Bamford, Mateo, Joseph. Bamford was released. Joseph was sent out on loan. And these are things that could have been done much earlier in the window. Leeds would have known, again, using the language that Leeds have said in their words, if that was the case, that they had planned for all of this and they knew Bamford wasn't going to be part of their plans, why wasn't more of an effort made to get those players out the door? And again, the prices on this for me don't really add up either. They also sold Sam Greenwood and sold Rasmus Christensen, which brought in roughly about £7.5 million in total. There or thereabouts. So that money would have come off that total spend as well, which would have brought it down below 100 million. Leeds reckon they had about 100, 115-ish, thereabouts million to spend. So it's still questionable whether they brought them in. And then the question comes up of, was it right to sign backup players early rather than get your primary targets as early as you could? So was it right to sign Sebastian Barnell and James Justin? No shade on them at all. They just came in. They're doing their job. I'm sure they'll have their value this season. But should you have gone out and spent 8 to 10 million on Justin, 6 to 7 million on Barnell? Or should you have kept that money along with the 10 million you had for Harry Wilson, put that together and gone and got a Gus Hamer or whoever else was out there, whoever else could have come in at that point? So that's the question for me on that as well. Again, I worded it today. There's more questions have come out of this than answers for me, if I'm being completely honest. There's also Tanaka as well, which I would never want to see Tanaka spent. But if you're looking at that, Tanaka would have brought in a huge amount of money based on what he's bought him for. But again, I don't want to see him go. But there were players but the question comes down to a recruitment team's job is not just to bring players in, it's also to move players out. And there was apparently, and the way it all looks is it looks like there was a very strong lacking in an ability to sell players or convince clubs to take players or to, maybe push players towards the exit door rather than sitting up their contracts, which Meslier looks like he's about to try and do. But we move on. The free agent market's an interesting one. This is quite a lengthy piece, so just bear with me for a sec. But the free agent market, and more so other things that are said here. So whether it's the window or it's the free agent market or it's January, it's about what does the team actually need? We need a right winger and we need a 10. That's what we need. What's the opportunity cost as far as the buy you can't make later on, the sale that you might have to make of your current roster? I don't think right now that there's any need. So great. It's worth going into the free agent market to fill it. in part because I doubt that the right player is there. He doubts that the right player is there. He doesn't know that the right player is there. He thinks the right player isn't there. Last year, we brought in Josh Gilavogi with an emergency crisis with injuries. Beyond that, it's probably wait and see. Once we get through the first 10 games, you've got 8 games in January. If you evaluate, we'll use that. But our goal is to avoid January if possible. Now, the 49ers last January brought in nobody. The January before that, they only brought in Connor Roberts. So they're very averse to doing their business in January. I do get the fact that you're trying to get everyone in and ready to go for a full season. But other teams around you will strengthen come January, especially if they're in trouble. So then you have a decision to make. How can you make sure that you get money spent? And apparently, we don't have any money. So if Leeds are to bring players in January, Leeds will have to sell players to do that. So there we are with that. And he says the reason that we didn't go big in January last year and the year before is the goal is to be done early. Actually, we got all of our core guys done before the season even began for that reason. Not just on deadline day, but actually before August. And the goal was for the key ones, it's there. But we don't see using free agencies as a priority because there's only a handful of players that we felt were good enough to begin with. And the pool obviously shrinks dramatically when you go from the entirety of the window, all the players in this window, to the handful of free agents that are now available. So, yeah, interesting one. Yeah. So just to get through a quick super chat from Rad Music Chat. 2 things to take from this. Wouldn't be Leeds without some drama. Yeah. Secondly, after Evans' terrible interview, can we have Angus back, please? I mean, he has changed how Angus Kinnear all of a sudden looks, doesn't he? Like it does do that. A quick update from Mike. Sky Sports. Brownhill will sign a deal to see him earn a staggering $100,000 a week contract. Reports say that he is due to travel to Saudi Arabia, so that's off the table for Leeds as well. So that's probably why Team Talk took down their article yesterday. They probably asked to take it down because it wasn't accurate. So there we go. And that's a shame for me. That's a shame. I quite like Josh Brownhill's player. Go on to the next part of it then. So actually, before we get to that one, go back a second here. The free agency in the loan market's interesting. There were players that could have gone in and got on loan. But again, if you left it till the last minute, then you're probably not going to get them. So that probably should have been done earlier. Again, if you look at what was said, and I'll go through it in more detail when we get to the actual summary of this. They brought in 7 by their training camp. Brought in, 11, 10 in total? 10 in total. It's 7 in by then. They had 5 weeks. 5 weeks to pick up 2. Farkas said after the first game of the season, he needed more attackers. After Newcastle, he said he needed 2. We still waited until the final day of the window to try and get a player done. And then we messed around with deal sheets and ultimately it fell apart. Could have made this a lot easier for ourselves. But to be saying that we executed the plan, I don't agree we did it, unless the plan involved 2 massive holes in the attacking third and you're planning on defending your way to a survival. Question from Shezer. Do we trust the ownership recruitment team to get us back if we get relegated or stay up? I think the issue with this is now, and we're all in this space, once we're done and dusted with this, we have to move on from it and wait and see. We have to assume that they know what they're doing, and we will judge that come January if we're in a decent spot or if we're not. And if we're not in a decent spot by that stage and we get relegated in May, then maybe there's a much stronger question. I do have opinions on that, and we will get to that before we wrap up, okay? But I will come back to this. Let's move on. Why didn't you sell players early in the window to create a profit and sustainability headroom, which is a valid question to ask as well. Evans, when we met with Daniel post-promotion in May, unsurprisingly, the players that we had the highest PSR profit on are the ones that were the most critical for our success last year and the most important ones for our success next year, rather than sell them preemptively on the expectation of having somebody whom the capital could be better deployed. We ticked off all of our highest priority boxes first. So they're saying with that they brought in all of their priority targets at the beginning of the window. So those 7 players, of which one of them was Bornau, who is a backup centre back. All of them they brought in, but that was the priority group. And there was no attackers in that Barmecha at that point. But they had them boxed off by them, they reckon. We had our early signings, and then if a big fish, which were more expensive, had come along, we could react to them and make sales at the point in time. We didn't think it was wise to lose those players just in case the capital is acquired, because having those guys in the team right now, the quality they bring, the continuity from last season, the familiarity with Daniel's strategy and his process adds a ton to our squad. Unless we were enabling somebody truly unique and different, I'd rather have them. So again, they're saying that they believe they would rather have last season's players than swap out a few of them to bring in maybe a Premier League caliber, proven caliber level, or something special in the final third, which is an interesting thing to say, considering of the last 2 seasons, all 6 teams promoted went straight back down with their squads. And a lot of them tried to invest, and most of them spent in and around what we spend. And the experts that float around in the football finance world will say, if you want to survive in the Premier League, you got to spend between 140 and 150 million. And Leeds didn't do that, but it's confusing for me. I think Leeds look like they've gone and spent all their money on their defense, or defensive-minded players in midfield as well, which I quite like. I'll give a proper opinion on that at the end, rather than going and get the firepower from to score goals this season. So it is interesting. Nick is saying, doesn't mention the bench player sales though. Loaned them out rather than selling them. Yeah, that's the, because, and again, might got a loan fee in. That might be about it, but not a huge amount. Got the wages off the books, but not a huge amount. Vega making a good point here. Whatever the valuation, the last 2 years we lost Jorginho, Somerville, Bamford, Solomon, Ramazani, Mateo in the attack, and brought in DCL, Okafor, Mecha, and replaced them with Premier League. Yeah, and and there's a lot of ifs with the players you brought in. Again, we'll get to the ifs, but that's it. So, and I'm big on language. I'm always interested in how people say things and how people word things. I've worked in marketing for a long time, so I kind of tend to spend a bit more detail listening to the language and the words that are used, and then looking at the gaps in the language. And some of it can be quite vague. And marketing speak, I suppose. This was the interesting one for me. I'm genuinely interested in this one. So, what was Daniel Farke's response to the way the window finished, given that he said survival will be difficult with additions? Now, again, before this question, they had said they're very happy with the window. They executed their plan. They got their primary targets in. That's what they said. Evan says, well, it's difficult either way. So it didn't matter if we got them or not. It was still going to be tough. It's certainly a little more difficult without more attackers, but he said that he got all his primary targets in. So none of the attackers were primary targets. We understand that. We talked last night. He also spoke with Adam Underwood. He has the same view we did, in that we would have liked it, but we have a great squad. Did tons of work early. We're averaging 2 points a game at home, and we'll go with the guys we have. I mean, you're talking about averaging points 3 games into a season, right? And it is a good start to the season. Dale is saying, Jer, what I don't like is that they're lying and it's easily provable. That's something I can't get past. First season back, and the 49ers are already lying and excused out. Now, we'll find out. The reason I'm saying let's give them the credibility here for a second and assume what they're saying about PSR is accurate. Let's just be fair, because we can prove if that's wrong come the accounting period when the PSR numbers are actually put out. Leeds reckon that they are right at the limit of PSR, right at the very top. And we'll see that when the accounts come out. And they reckon that that's fine. Everyone will see it. No point in lying at the words that they've used. So we will see. We will see with that. But this was interesting because Daniel Farke said a week ago he needs 2 players or it's going to be very difficult. They're saying for Daniel that he agrees that they got all their best targets in, the primary targets, that they're really happy with the window, but they would have liked the cherry on top, but not the end of the world that we didn't get it. Now, again, if you go back to Daniel Farke's exact words, it will be a difficult season if we don't get 2 in. We got none in. So, listen to Farke's exact words, and Daniel Farke doesn't say things for effect. He's very deliberate with the language he uses, and take into consideration what they're saying here. It feels like upper management is managing what the manager is saying, or speaking for him, and we'll see if Daniel Farke has the same opinion come the press conference. And keep an eye out for Daniel Farke looking straight down at the table, because when he's asked a question he's not comfortable answering, Daniel tends to look straight down and play with a pen like I do, or fiddle with the desk. Just keep an eye on that. And if he's confident about it and he reckons we are solid, fine. Let me move on. Do you have concerns internally about the number of goals that you could score this season? Do you think you have enough goals in this team to stay up? Evan says, I do think we have enough firepower to stay up. That's always a concern, like every promoted side, of scoring. At the same time, the goals that you allow are also important. For us, it's always a trade-off of adding defensive firepower versus offensive firepower and getting the balance right. I do think our strategy this summer was balanced towards both of those things, since the goal is to win 10 games, whatever it is, we're capable of winning them. And we may well be. I'm not saying we're not. I'm not saying this team isn't capable of doing that. But there is, as Michael is saying here, a rumor that Leeds have lowballed targets this summer. And again, there was a man who was on the American Leeds podcast, Alex, who helps me out with this channel from time to time, We'll get to that. I have pinned those comments as well. We'll come to them towards the end. And he basically says they're following the similar strategy they follow in the States with the 49ers NFL franchise, which is bringing in players with an injury record because they get them cheaper and lowballing targets to try and get them in and force deals through, which, as we've seen in football versus NFL, it don't work like that in the Premier League. It does not work like that in the Premier League. So, yeah. And he's saying to hell with PSR, we will go down without goals. We may as well go for it, which we believe some that have gone for it. Now, bigger headroom as well, but we'll see. But this one, yeah. Defensive firepower over attacking. So our attacking firepower is DCL and Meslier and Joe Peru, who hasn't looked like he fits that current system that they're playing right now. And there's an awful lot of ifs now and shoulds and possibles labeled with this squad. We have to hope that DCL doesn't get injured, and we have to hope Lucas Meslier doesn't get injured. If they don't get injured, two very good strikers. I've been really impressed with Meslier so far, and I like him. But they do have extensive injury CVs, and that's where we will need to keep an eye on that. They do talk about that as well. They basically said that they have faith in the quality of their medical team to make sure that these players can get through a season like Solomon, like Byram did last year. So, again, we'll have to wait and see. Pete, this is BS. Prove the manager with a balanced squad. It's the tactics which should be based towards attack and defense. Well, he hasn't got a balanced squad, Pete, and that's what you've been left with. I mean, he's got 4 goalkeepers. He's got who can play number 9? Meslier, DCL, Peru, Okafor. 4 strikers. Who's he got on the right? Dan James. Who's he got as a 10? Brendan Aronson. That is it. Now, other players can play in positions. Well, Nunto can play over on the right-hand side. Jack Harrison can play over on the right. Nunto can play in the 10. Harrison can play in the 10. Aronson can play on the right. But they're not bespoke. They are players that can be moved around. And again, how many years have we been saying it from a Leeds United perspective? Square pegs, round holes. And when are we going to get bespoke player in bespoke positions? And that's all I'm looking for. So that was an odd one for me. The next one, this one blew my socks, to be completely honest. Illan Meslier. This is a remarkable answer for me. And I'd love to know your take on this specific question in the chat. There is some interest in Illan. Oh, sorry. What's the state of play with Illan Meslier? Evans. There was some interest in Illan, but it wasn't as strong as I'd expected for a player of his caliber. I know he lost a spot late last season because the team needed a change, but he's a good player, a young player, lots of experience. And frankly, he didn't want to go into a situation he didn't want to be in. It ended up being the case for both parties that it was better he be here. Now, I'm not sure, and I said it in the news today, I'm not sure how it's better for both parties that he stays here. Illan Meslier is on a whopper contract at Leeds United. His money would have gone up this year because he signed a new deal in the Premier League the last time we were there. He took a 60% pay drop when we went down. That kicks back up to its normal one. He's on big money. He is Leeds' 4th choice goalkeeper. And as of right now, as it stands right now, he's not even registered for the Leeds 25-man squad. Leeds have 24 players currently. They could bring Meslier in, but then again gives them 4 goalkeepers then of 25 players, which is bonkers. But to say that it's better he's there, that's like saying when we didn't want to send him somewhere he didn't go, so we've let him stick around and we're going to pay him huge amounts of money. And again, not a slight on Illan, not directed as a dig at Illan. That guy's got to do whatever he's got to do to make money. We're all in the same boat. We all do what we need to do. But an incredible comment to make for me that it's better for him to be here than Leeds actually making, and there's a player right there, 100% PSR profit. Had they sold him for $1 million, that's bankable. Can be used to buy a player in PSR. Perfect. Anything. Now, there is talk that Illan Meslier is planning on sitting out his contract at Leeds, picking up his wage for the year because he's not going to get that money anywhere else after what happened last year. But Leeds have really failed to get to move him on, and that's a problem. But to say that you're okay with him being here, you know, Skip, I hear you here. You can talk about Perry's passing all you want. You can talk about his ability to do rondos, step overs, and overhead kicks. His job is to stop the ball going in the back of the net. He's got 2 clean sheets under his belt so far. I don't care if Lucas Perry can dink a ball to a fullback or not. I care that he stops balls going into the net. And like last season, he doesn't drop one in his own net. So that's all I care about with a goalkeeper. It'd be great if you had the full package, but the minimum I require from a goalkeeper is stop the ball going in behind you. And that's what he needs to do. I hear the comments on the footwork, but if he goes long for the rest of the season, I don't care. I don't care. It's not his job to be a creative player. His job is to stop the ball going in the back of the net. But yeah, Mad comment for me. Just, I mean, could you hear the word? If you were answering that question like that, you can hear the words coming out of your mouth. You'd probably stop yourself and go, hang on a second. Yeah, that doesn't sound like something I should be saying, because you could have made money there. You really could have. Okay, last one. Did you manage to avoid relegation release clauses with all the players that you brought in? Every player's contract is different. I say categorically that we do not have any relegation loan clauses, which I found to be the most catastrophic, because you lose players for nothing. Some players have got relegation sale clauses. All of them are at a price at or above normal, well above the price we paid for them, and many of them don't. So, but that doesn't make sense either. This is the thing. Some players have relegation sale clauses. All of them are at a price at or above normal, well above the price that we paid for them, and many of them don't have clauses. Okay? So it's a person-on-person basis based on the leverage, but I'm pretty confident to a man, any player that comes down, either we will be in control of their sale or not, or they're sold. I'm comfortable with the return that they'll have generated to make up the worthwhile. We have some as well. We have them leave. Super chat coming in from RD. At first, they backed the manager, then they stabbed him in the back. Well, I mean, yep. Well, they didn't give him a full deck of cards, they promised. And again, my issue here is I'm holding them to account for the language that they've used themselves, for the words that they said. Daniel Farke did have a full deck of cards in the Premier League in his last 2 stints with Norwich. We will rectify that this time around. He's going in lacking 2 players that he has asked for. Now, in this list here should also be included Jack Harrison does have a relegation release loan clause, because that's still in his contract while Leeds are out of the Premier League. While they're in the Premier League, it doesn't matter. But if they go out, it does matter. So from that perspective, there is still one there, and we'll have to deal with that one. But yeah, outside of that, if we do, the new players that have come in, I think Okafor will probably have a relegation release clause. I would imagine Perry will have one as well. I would imagine Stack will have one as well. That's not quite normal, but at least they're over the value. But I'll get to the squad in a second, because I do want to talk about the squad depth a little bit. I think that's the last one, is it? It is the last one. So we'll come back off. And again, just the cues. I'm going to try and change my camera down a bit, because if I can take the setting down, then maybe the lag goes away a little bit. I'll tell you what, we'll go 720, see how we get on. Hopefully now that gets rid of the lag. I don't think it is getting rid of the lag, but we'll see how we go. New camera, we'll figure it out. Anyway, if we can handle the lag, we'll move on. So what I want to talk about now and get through this next bit is this summary. Leeds went early and they bought backup players early. James Justin was a backup fullback. Bornell, backup centre-back. Why do that and not have any money left at the end of the window to still buy what would need to be a primary position? A right-sided player who can come in on his left and a number 10, right? Why do that? That to me says that you didn't execute your plan and that you didn't plan correctly. Because if you were planning and you were haggling and you were trying to get deals down to a lower price, then you would know how much money you want to spend on each of these deals. And then all of a sudden you ran out of money with 2 positions left to go. So that to me doesn't add up. 6 months of planning, we were told, but still missed out on the last day. Took too long at the very end. Now, why wasn't Harry Wilson done earlier in the week? Why wait till deadline day? And again, if you're to believe the reports, and the Athletics say this as well, Gus Hamer was there to be done. And Leeds did consider it. There's that. This is a personal opinion. Let me know. I'm really interested in this. Let me know in the comments if you think this. But personally, does anybody believe that Harry Wilson was a primary target by Leeds United? I'd love to know what people think about that. Personally, I don't believe he was. I believe he was we couldn't get what we wanted. We need something. Now, Buonanotte, probably. But again, they're saying they went for their first choices. So Harry Wilson, had he come in, had they done this interview, they would have said we got our primary targets. All of our signings were the ones we wanted. I don't believe Harry Wilson was very high on the list on the right-hand side. Personal opinion. That's all that is. And again, no stand on Harry Wilson. Very good Premier League player. Good caliber. Plenty of games behind him. Loads of experience. I would have liked 2 if he came in. He didn't solve all of our problems, but I would have taken him at the end. So they said they were ready to go at the end of the season. And then by the end of the window, they appeared that they weren't ready because they didn't fill the gaps and they didn't deliver. So some people have said to me, and it's a fair point, and we balance this out. They said to me that You're ignoring the first half of the window and acting like it never happened. It did happen. It was very good. It was really, really good. 7 players in before they went to Germany. Really, really good, right? So, but that's like talking about a football match and saying you didn't do a match review. You don't review a match after 45 minutes. You wait till 90 minutes, then you review it in its totality and talk about the entire game. No point winning a game 1-0 at halftime and losing 4-1. Do you know what I mean? So for me, first half was very good. Second half takes away from that because you've got half of the job done. More was needed. So yeah, first half of the window, they brought in 7 players before Germany. That was excellent. Excellent. And I think I said that all summer. Great work. Well done. Brilliant stuff. But you've got to go and finish the job. You know, it's no point being in a 100-meter race and halfway through it going, I'm winning this. I can walk the rest. You lose at the end. So on the PSR stuff, 100 million was what Leeds said that they had. They've been planning to get this done for 6 months. So you would imagine then they've allocated numbers against each of the players they want to bring in. And again, they got all their primary targets. So you'd assume they got them for the value. I would now say, and I can say this now at the end of it, during the window, I kept saying, wait and see, wait and see, wait and see. We get to the end of the window. Now it's time to judge. They wasted too much time on Muniz at the start of the window, and they probably spent too long on Peugeot. The big one with Peugeot is they didn't move quick enough after Peugeot to get a Peugeot level. There weren't many Peugeot levels around, and I accept that. That's fair. But they didn't move to get that replacement in quick enough. And I know. If Noah Okafor hadn't been at the Aviva Stadium in Dublin and seen the Leeds United crowd that day, would we have convinced him to come to Leeds United? Bearing in mind, Josh Gilavogi was used to talk Borneo and Mecha into joining Leeds United. Lucas Perry was asked to go on the phone to talk to Peugeot. Promotion videos were shown of the parade at the end of the season to show the players what the fan base was. All of them are tactics being used to bring people to the club, not the people behind the scenes actually selling the project to them. That's an issue for me as well. And then Lucas saying, very well, you can't go into a gunfight with a spatula. You can't. Or a water pistol, as the one has been labeled today. Yes, I didn't relate well enough to that. All right, injury CVs. Let's talk about this. So, I like Noah Okafor. I like Dominic Calvert-Lewin. And I like Lucas Mecha. I like all of them. They're really, really good, right? But they all have a caveat beside their name, and that is, can they stay fit for the season? Now, the club say that they have confidence in the brand new medical team that came in last year. That did, and it has to be given the credit. Try and be balanced. They did do a great job keeping Manor Solomon fit, and they did do a great job keeping Sam Byron fit for the season. Now, they both were out for little bits with injuries, but nothing major, so credit where it's due. But they're putting all the pressure on that team to keep these 3 players fully fit. Bear in mind, Noah Okafor has got a bit of a groin issue at the moment. Should be fine. He's not away with Switzerland, so he gets a chance to rest up and should be okay for Fulham. We'll see where we are there. But there's an awful lot of ifs there. If Okafor plays well and can create the goals, because he's the one that's going to have to do it. If he can stay fit. If DCL can prove his fitness and get a full season under his belt. If Lucas Mecha can hold his body together and also get a load of games back to back together. If that works, great. Job well done. But if it doesn't, and that's the problem, they're ifs. If it doesn't, it's a big gamble. And then going back to what's been said about the 49ers with the NFL, they've done similar things there. And it doesn't always pay off. I believe we got away with it in January last year. Not strengthening the side. We didn't get away with it the year before. And I don't believe we'll get away with it this January if we decide not to do any business either. And it's very early in the season to be putting a statement out that you don't plan on doing business in January or you don't want to do business in January. I get that people don't want it, but you might have to. And again, if Daniel Farke didn't get the final 2 pieces of the puzzle that he wanted, then you might have to. It's interesting. Yeah, as been said very well with Vega, 32 million pounds on depth and 19 on attack. Not sound at all. No, it's poor. The Hamer interest is interesting. I've already said that. The Athletic believe that Leeds did try and get Hamer towards the back end of the window. The club have said they made no interest at all in Hamer. I don't believe that. There was a lot of us were given information over the last couple of weekends by people that we all know, neighbours of Hamer, who said that Leeds United were in talks and they were hoping to get it done over the weekend before the deadline week. Didn't. Went on the week. Still didn't get it done. In the last minute after Wilson, they tried to grab him at the last second. And I wonder, was that a reaction to online and fan sentiment? They didn't get him in the end. And again, I say this, whether you rate Gus Hamer for Premier League or not, whether you like him or not, he got 10 GNA with a poor Sheffield United side when they were in the Premier League. He can take a free kick, he can take a corner, and he can score goals from distance. Something we don't have. So he definitely would have added something there, whether it be off the bench or not. Can Okafor play as a centre forward? He can, but the main reason he left AC Milan and came to Leeds is They kept playing him as a striker and he wants to play on the left, which is his natural position. But he can do a job there and has played there and scored goals there as well. So should be said. Right. So, and then ultimately to box off this part, Farkas said that we need 2 players or it'll be a difficult season. Parag said that most of the business gets done in the last few days of the window and they didn't do any business and they didn't get Farkas those 2 players. So if you look at the whole thing in its entirety, top to bottom, first half very good, second half is a failure. And I think that's fair. So if you've maxed out on 100 million, you've spent every single penny, but you had 10 million pounds floating around for Wilson, but somebody would have to have been sold in January. I don't buy that. I don't think they've spread the money well enough. I don't think they've prioritized the right positions. And I think they've held on to too many players that ultimately won't have a part to play this season. I think the championship squad, and I've got an opinion on this, and I'll give it to you in a sec. That championship squad is still there. And I wonder, is it still there for a reason? Let's balance this out and go good and bad. The good of the window is the defense. I think we've made really good strides there. We've got 2 clean sheets already in 3 games. Ipswich got 2 clean sheets all last season. Leicester got 3 all season. We've already got 2 in the bank. So that's a positive start, and I'll take that. Sean Longstaff, Anton Stack, and Gudmundsson already look good and already look like they've added something to the side. Bial, I think, will prove to be a very good centre-back. He's very good for his national side. He's very good in Serie A, and that's a very defensive-focused league. Whether he can fit into a 4-3-3 rather than 3 at the back, we'll have to wait and see. But he didn't exactly play with the first 11 against Sheffield Wednesday. He played with the backup players, and that's never a good metric to judge anyone on. So we'll see with that, but I think he'll be a good player. Having 7 players in before the training camp, great business, well done, good stuff. And again, defensive solidity for me, really, really good. So there's the positives. And again, trying to be fair. Yeah, sorry, something's behind on the stream. We'll come back to you, Darren. Negatives. Didn't spend well enough on attack. 2 free transfers up front. Didn't spend well enough. Now, Dominic Calvert-Lewin, if fit, could be a really good signing. He's a very good striker. He is. Regardless of what Everton will tell you, he's a very good striker. But for me, it's a gamble. Gambling on the injury-prone players is an issue for me. Maybe spent too much on the backup players and not enough on the players that needed to start and when they could have gone and got the attackers done earlier. Ramazani left. Maybe you could have sold him if you're going to let him go. Didn't want to sell him, then he should be part of the squad. That to me feels like a board manager dispute there. If we're going to let him go because you don't like him, but you might not be here in 6 months' time, so we're not going to put an option in and we'll keep him around. We'll get him back in if that's the case. But he wasn't replaced. That's important. They've left themselves short in 2 key areas, and they've gambled on fitness and form. We're relying on Dan James to find form now, and we're relying on Willie Gnonto to really kick into gear this season, and I'm okay. I'm okay. Michael got us saying, I heard Tuesday that we were not intending to be active in January window too. I also heard it was very quiet around Thorpe Arch on deadline day. I don't know how true that is, but apparently there was very few people around there. So it's interesting. The other big negative of the transfer window is the inability to sell players and move players on to generate funds. If you look at all the teams that did well when they got promoted, Nottingham Forest being the prime one, they sold well. They sold quick and they sold well. We dilly-dallied with the sales, tried to hang on to players in case we didn't get targets, and then ultimately you're left with these players. You release Pat Bamford, it's going to cost you money. You send Mateo Joseph out on loan, get your wages off the bill. Ramazani goes out on loan, gets wages off the bill, doesn't bring any money in. So for me, that's how I judge it. I have more negatives than I have positives, but there are some positives, and that should be said, but there are a hell of a lot of negatives in there as well. When you talk about generating PSR money, this is the interesting part for me. Ilan Meslier, Pascal Struijk, Jack Harrison, Pat Bamford, Mateo Joseph, all of them would have generated big PSR money. You can include out Tanaka in that, and you probably could have got money on Joe Pirou as well. There were offers on the table for Joe Pirou. Is he going to play this season? Leeds have got, again, Metcha seems to be number 1. Calvert-Lewin, when fit, will probably be in and around that as well. Then you've got Pirou, you've got Harry Gray, and you've got Okafor. You could have, and again, I like Joe Pirou, and I hate saying this out loud because I really do like Joe Pirou, but you've got to look at this unemotionally and say, we've got to balance the squad here to have the best chance of staying in the league. Could you have sold one of your glut of players in one position to fix a wafer thin area of the park? And I think we have. Paul saying, if we have no money now, we can't have any in January, which is exactly the point that doesn't add up there. So again, I agree with you on that. Presumably our operating costs were relatively high. They were last year, and we only kept 50 million of that. That's still 200 million of amortization PSR headroom for 4 years. Plus the club also raised 120 million in new revenue when they did the share sale at the start of the season. Half of that was to go on the stadium. Half of that was to go into the team. That's an additional 60 million. Do I think we'll stay up? I think we've got enough to stay up, but it's going to be one hell of a grind, and people have to stay fit. That's a big if. It's a big if. So here's my take on what's left. And I'll leave you with this tonight, and you can go about your business and enjoy the rest of your evening. But here's where I am on this. Leeds from last season, players that I think, and they're not all on this, but the ones that I'm looking at: Carl Darlow, Jaden Bogle, Joe Rodon, Pascal Stroke, Sam Byram, James Justin, Ao Tanaka, Ethan Ampadu, Ilya Gruev, Dan James, Brendan Aronson, Joe Peru, and Willie Nonto. That's the core, with the addition of James Justin of last season's championship squad. To me, and I could be wrong, and I hope I am, it feels that they might just be hedging their bets here and hanging on to these players just in case we go down next season, and that these players, with the sales of the other ones and a couple of additions, will get us back up again. That is my personal opinion on that. And again, I could be wrong, and I hope I am, because if I'm wrong, Leeds have been successful this season. But that's where I am with this. Harrison still has a relegation release clause on loan if Leeds go down. The new signings have got relegation release clauses, but all at a profit or equal, and that's okay. No issues there. If the recruitment team can sell, and that will be important to see. So that's my opinion of the whole thing. To wrap it all up tonight and move on from this now, we get back to normal at the weekend. We've got press conferences next week, and then we are in to actual games. We come back out of the international break to play Fulham. And I'm excited about that. I want to get back to seeing Leeds playing football, but this is what we've got. And this is where we move now forward. We've got to park all the sentiment, get behind the team and move forward. We've all made our points pretty clear on this. This is not going to go away. This video will be here forever. So people want that opinion. It's here. No point in flogging a dead horse, and no point, as was always said to me, make your point, don't celebrate it. Point's been made now. We need to move on from it, and we'll see how we go. I'll just go through the last few comments that I did start before we wrap up. This was an interesting one, the 49ers, so thank you, Michael. Jared, on the American Leeds podcast last night, they stated our present recruiters, with their relation to the 49ers, had the attitude of lowballing offers to potential players and upsetting them. And that appears to be, again, what I saw, that appears to be how they operate with the NFL franchise. And maybe that's the same here. Terry is saying, Jared, do you think the issues going forward stems from the change in formation rather than... No, because you still needed a right-sided inverted player, and Leeds went all preseason with a 4-3-3, so they clearly planned for this as well. So yeah, for me, no, I don't think it does. And to be fair, 4-2-3-1 is essentially still a 4-3-3. You just drop your 10 back a little bit to make 3 in the middle. You tuck your 2 wingers in, and it's 4-3-3. Not a huge difference in the two of them. So yeah, I don't think so. Maybe they're looking at parachute and then promotion money. I don't know if it would work that well, because over a 3-year PSR period, they'd still be classified as having 2 years in the championship, which was the same last year. So it doesn't really work out that well for us. We'll have to see. Let's hope we're wrong. Let's hope that this has been a good window. Let's hope that everything Robbie Evans said yesterday is on the money. That they've executed the plan correctly, that they've brought in the best players, they've got a really good squad, and that it's enough to keep Leeds United in the Premier League. Leeds have the 6th highest revenue in the Premier League. I don't see why we couldn't have gone and done more here. We'll see where we go. There's a lot riding on this season. Stadium redevelopment, future of the football club, and rightly fans, and they're allowed to, are a little bit pissed off what they've heard over the last couple of days. And I think they're allowed to be that way, because the entire survival of this club, if we go down again, we're turning into a yo-yo club, and Leeds United are not a yo-yo club and should never be a yo-yo club. So yeah, Michael's saying the American and Leeds podcast, they really unraveled Prague. It's worth a watch. Alex does a very good podcast. He really does. He helps me out. We do the Sunday sessions, which is our audio only podcast, which is available on Spotify. Alex does a very good job. He's very balanced. He's very fair. He asks good, thought out questions. So go and check that out, Alex at American and Leeds. And if you want to get an idea what the 49ers are like with their 49ers NFL franchise versus what's happened here, there are similar parallels. And again, before anyone says Leeds were distracted or 49ers were distracted by Rangers, the Rangers fans are annoyed. The 49ers NFL fans are currently quite annoyed, and Leeds United fans are very annoyed. So all three of their entities are a little bit annoyed at the ownership. But this interview with Robbie Evans, given what has been said before that and what we've seen come through the door, to me, feels like a PR exercise, which we predicted would happen. The PSR line's been rolled out as we predicted would happen. And it feels to me like a managing expectations. I would have had much more respect Had Robbie Evans sat down with the square ball like Angus Kinnear used to do and faced the music face to face instead of doing a sit down written only interview where it could be a lot more controlled environment. I would have liked to have seen Dan Moylan get into him on a couple of pieces and see what he thought then. But that's where we are, folks. Let me know your thoughts down below in the comments. Give us a like. If you haven't watched today's news video, support the channel. Go over and watch today's news video. It's only 10 minutes. It won't take too much of your day. Really helps me out here as well. And when the stream is over, if you're watching this on demand, there's a little hype button. If you want to smash that little hype button, I don't know what it does. Might be it helps. Maybe it doesn't, but we'll see. But again, massive thank you to everybody who has supported the channel. Thank you for your super chats during this quiet period. It really does help. Appreciate every single body. And I will see you tomorrow morning for the final news video of the week. And then we go into the weekend. And then we're getting back to real football. Only a week to go. If you're interested in Irish international football, we are doing a watch along on Big Up for the Ireland game against Armenia. You can check that out over the weekend if you want to. Outside that, enjoy your weekend. I'll see you tomorrow morning for the news. See you later. Bye.